In business, there are people who grow faster than others. And it's not because they are smarter or richer. It's because they've been able to avoid certain traps. I wasn't that lucky. I fell into every single one of these traps, and some of these mistakes cost me profits, left me chasing clients who never paid, and burned through my energy with nothing to show for it. That doesn't have to be you. And while all these mistakes hurt, there's one mistake that almost nearly completely crashed my business to a point where I nearly shut it down. I'll tell you about it towards the end. Competing on price is a race to the bottom, especially if you're an SME. Look, manufacturers can be able to afford to compete on price because they control all aspects of the value chain, but you as an SME, unfortunately, that's not the best strategy that you can do, because this will turn your business into a commodity. And before you know it, it will strip away your leverage. Let me break it down. Here's how competing on price works. You see, if you're in a market, you're both selling, let's just say, water. You're both selling water, and you're probably targeting the same market. Now, what will happen is that if your competition sees that probably, things are not moving quite quick and things like that, or they want to have a little bit of an advantage, they'll reduce their price. If that bottle of water was probably like 5 kwacha, they'll try and reduce it to 4 kwacha. When they reduce it to 4 kwacha, that will benefit the customer, and most likely most customers will be buying from them. You will see that and be like, damn, people are buying from this guy. Let me also reduce it to 4 kwacha, or maybe let me even reduce it to 3 kwacha. But if you look at that game, each and every single one of you out there is shrinking your margins. Your profits are slowly going down, and before you know it, your bottle of water will now be 1 kwacha. How many sales of 1 kwacha do you have to sell before you can be able to afford rent? What we then mean is that you won't be able to even afford common expenses. You won't be able to pay your people. Why? Because you've shrinked your profits to the minimum. So, how does a business owner get to a point where they are competing on price? Well, this usually happens when you are so insecure about your value, or you're just too eager to close deals. You're not looking at the long-term play. If you don't know how to position yourself, dropping your price becomes your only weapon, and it's a weak one. I'll admit, I've been there, done that. When I started off, I was charging logos like 300 kwacha and company profiles like 500 kwacha. Now, if you're producing exceptional work, there is no way you can have a company profile for like 500 kwacha, right? The company profile ranges from 2,500 kwacha at the minimum, and about even 11,000 to about 12,000 kwacha, depending on the goal and the value and what the ultimate goal is with that project, right? So now look at this. You're charging 500 kwacha. What kind of customers are you going to attract? For me, I attracted low value customers. These are people who would haggle on each and everything that I would charge. In short, everything would be a negotiation. Some of these won't even pay. They would even just disappear. I remember there was one guy that I designed a profile for. Of course, he paid the first deposit, which was like a 250 kwacha. I designed all that for him. So out of goodwill, I thought, okay, I'm done with designing this profile. Let me submit it to him. He'll give me the rest of the money. I submitted this to him. He took the profile, submitted it to his tender, won that tender, and disappeared off the face of the earth, never ever to be heard from. Those are the types of clients that I was attracting. Now, it's not only the client themselves, it's also on me, because one, I never stuck to those payment terms, and I was so insecure to just ask for the money up front. If you don't have boundaries, people will walk all over you. And like it or not, if your product is at the low end, these are the types of clients that you will meet. But to be able to solve this problem, you need to look into positioning. Positioning is your only key out. Why? Because if you look at, even in every market that people are charging very, very little amounts of money, there are a few players that are charging premium prices and are able to make really, really healthy margins. So why can't one of those guys be you? To get to that point, you need to dial in on your ideal customer profile. You need to look into exactly what makes you different. You really need to reflect and understand exactly the value that you are presenting to the market. You need to step out of your comfort zone and look at how the market is going to perceive you. What will be your brand voice? What will be your colors? What will be your culture? How will your customer service be like? How will the whole customer onboarding process feel like? In short, how will the customer experience feel like? If you look into how to position yourself properly, I'm telling you, you will stop selling your work and you will start selling outcomes and be able to charge premium prices. That's the only way out from competing on price. Premium clients pay premium prices because they see value. I've seen this time and time again. Businesses will keep all their funds in one account. They will keep their profits, they will keep their expenses, they will keep their taxes, they will keep their salaries. Literally, all the funds that the business generates will be in one account. So, everything ends up just being tangled up into one thing. So when you have an account that is structured up like that, sometimes it looks like you're making a lot of money. But in reality, it's only because you don't know what's what. You don't know what the working capital is. You don't know what the operations is. You don't know what the expenses are. Everything is just tangled up. Let's be real. Life sometimes has its own pressures. As a director of a company, sometimes you need to withdraw some of the money from the business, right? You need to use it for something urgent or something like that, right? But if everything is bunched up in one thing, sometimes when you make that withdrawal, you'll be eating and dipping into your capital. Sometimes you might even be unfortunate to dig into all the profits. If those withdrawals continue, what will then happen is that you just start seeing things in your shop. Let's say if you're a trader, you start seeing things in your shop reducing in volume. Your inventory is slowly going down. As you progress, you just find that the money does not even come out from the business. You're not even able to order some of the stock back. Why? Because you ate into your working capital. What keeping all your money into one account does is that it makes you think as if it's all usable cash. I used to work with a business that was doing almost 1.6 million every single month. But with only one account, they used to live hand to mouth. Every single day they would have expenses. When sales come in, they would take it to all these and those expenses and things like that. They'll be living hand to mouth. When month end comes, they'll be scrambling around to be able to pay workers. But these are people that are generating 1.6 million kwacha. So what was their problem? This wasn't a revenue problem. It was a structure problem. So how do you avoid this? How do you avoid falling into such a problem? You have to create multiple accounts. The basics that you need are an operations account. This will be used to spend money on a day-to-day. There's those day-to-day expenses, for cleaning, things like that. There's those operational expenses that you need every single day, right? You need those in an operations account. Then you need an expenses account. Expenses might even be the same salary, but for me, I advise you put a salary account on its own. But it could be salary, it could be rent, it could be whatever it is. All the expenses that your business accrues, they go into this account. Then you might need an income account. This income account is where everything is coming in, right? So all the money comes into this income account, and the income account distributes to each and every single one of these other accounts. Then you might need a tax account. I also avoid trying mixing expenses and taxes. Create a tax account on its own so that you can avoid future troubles, right? So what does this do for you? This gives you control and not confusion. You'll be able to see how your business is growing. You'll be able to see just how much profit you're making. You'll be able to see just how much you're doing on expenses. So that you can even be able to think, this is what we're having on expenses, right? So what I can do is maybe we reduce on spending on this and that thing. If you're able to do those operations accounts, you can be able to optimize those operations expenses, right? Because you're seeing exactly how things are coming out and how things are going. So you need to be able to separate all these accounts. So financial management. It's shocking to me how many businesses have got no tax plan and no tax strategy. In Zambia, I've seen this happen time and time again. Most business owners just think business is about making a profit, just selling, right? But remember, every single business has got a responsibility for compliance. You need to be compliant with ZRA, you need to be compliant everywhere else. Now, sometimes it might just be ignorance, they don't know any better. But most times it's just negligence. They know that they have to pay tax, and they'll even collect that tax on all those sales. But then they'll end up making tax money into their accounts. Now, I advise against this heavily because the consequences are very real. There are penalties, and sometimes you might find yourself locked up. So just prioritize your taxes. You see, there was a company that I worked for, and when money comes in, these were big sales that we were doing. So money would come in each and every single month, but money would come in together with the tax, that extra 16% from VAT, right? What would happen is that the business owner would get greedy and use up all this money to buy new material. Now, as he uses up all that money to buy material, it means that the tax money has been mixed up and held up in those materials. Some of that material would take months and months to be able to be sold, but that tax is still being held up in those things. And once we submit the tax return, the liabilities are slowly piling up. When I left that business, the liabilities were almost at 600,000 kwacha, which was huge. Now, when ZRA were sending demand letters that this person pays up all this or they'll be able to grab property and things like that, this led him into having BP, this led him into having all sorts of problems and things like that. But these things could have been avoided in the first place. So what you do, as I had advised earlier, create a tax account. Don't negotiate on the taxes. Immediately the money hits your account, remove that 16% or whatever it is that you are being charged in your country or wherever. Get that 16%, throw it into the tax account, and just forget about it. That's not your money. Remember, you can ignore taxes, but they won't ignore you. Now, the basics of business are you should keep your expenses low. Now, this may seem like an innocent concept, but if you look at this in terms of hiring labor, this will lead you into hiring what is called cheap labor. In your mind, you are trying to get people that will get paid low because it will keep the expenses down. But probably what you didn't take into account are the errors that these people will be able to make, the poor results that they'll be able to deliver. And because of the poor service that these individuals are delivering, some of this can even lead into lost clients. This mistake comes about when you view employees as expenses. Employees are not expenses, these are investments. The only reason for hiring is that you need to be able to put on somebody who will be able to deliver more than you can. That's why you require top talent, because top talent can be able to achieve 10x what you could have achieved if you were just alone or if you were doing it by yourself. So imagine you bring in a talented salesperson. If you're able to sell 100,000 kwacha by yourself, this individual can be able to do 10x more. That would mean 1 million kwacha in sales. If you were just alone, you wouldn't have been able to achieve all that. That's how you should be able to look at talent. Talent should be able to do more than you can. You should bring in people that are 10 times smarter than you at that particular field. But you should be the one that's more knowledgeable about the business than everyone else, right? Look, I work for a company where I was the COO, I was the Chief Operating Officer, and as knowledgeable as I am about all this, unfortunately for me, I had no choice. This was the talent that was at my disposal. So what this cheap labor was able to do for me is that sometimes they won't be able to deliver things the way they should be done. So instead of me as the leader being able to sit back and strategize and look at our future, I was out there in the field doing sales, making cold calls, doing things because I believe that nobody will be able to do it better than I can. Now, this is a very, very big trap. If you're a business owner stuck in such a mindset thinking you're the only one who can be able to do it better, it means what you have right there is an incompetent team. And if you were just to step away, that business will crumble to the floor. So I want you to think about this. Spending less when it comes to hiring people does not mean that you're saving money. You'll still be able to spend money fixing the costly mistakes that these individuals will be making. Look, hire intentionally, train well, and invest in people who help you scale. Don't hire cheap labor. Make the pay attractive. Hiring alone is not enough. People must grow. When your team stays stagnant, they start resisting change. When you bring in new talent, these individuals will be seeing that person as a threat. And as such, toxicity grows and politics become rampant. Most business owners are scared to develop their employees because they think, what if I train them and they leave? But someone asked, what if you train them and they stay? That's a valuable asset for your business. Someone who can be able to deliver and help the business scale. They're not just there to do the job. People must not believe in your company the same way they came. They should not leave your company with the same mindset. Look, there was a company that I joined and I was the new talent, unfortunately. And unfortunately for me, these were individuals who were very, very much less educated, right? Now, nothing against people that are not educated, right? But for me, this was tough. From the get-go, these individuals saw me as a threat. And anything that I would try to implement that would be the betterment of the company, these individuals would be against. Whatever new initiative I bring across, they'll be looking at it as a threat, plotting against that new initiative, even things that are supposed to help them as well, simply because they hated the person that is implementing those things. Now, if that's the kind of team that you have, how do you expect to grow? How do you expect to move to a new level? To avoid this, you need to create development plans. You need to offer trainings. You need to be able to build feedback systems. If someone leaves your company, you must know the reason why they left. You must get some feedback from them. Even individuals that have been working for you for the longest, you need to be able to get feedback from time to time. If you take some of that feedback seriously, they'll be able to seriously improve the company and the culture. So make learning a company value. When your team grows, the business grows. Let's be honest, if your business can't function without you, it's not a business, it's a job. And you're the employee and the boss at the same time. The way you find yourself here is not being intentional about creating systems. It comes from not documenting processes. Everything just lives in your head and you believe, only I can be able to do this right. And in the beginning stages of my business, that was me. It was so bad that I couldn't even take a weekend off. In my head, I was like, if I take a weekend off, everything will fall apart. But I sat back and I was like, damn, this is not really healthy. Things happen sometimes. You get sick or you just have family problems, right? Now, if you're the type of individual that just can't even step away from your business even just for a bit, if you have those sorts of emergencies, what will then happen to your business? Think about it. Now, let me simplify a system for you or a process for you. A process is a stage by stage of how you do things. So once you have the process down of how you get things done, that process will then make up a whole system if it's all documented. So a system is just different processes working together. So the way you create those processes is you document document each and every single thing you do, especially those things that are not income generating for you especially. I'll give you an example. In my business, sometimes we run courses, right? And the way we generate customers for those courses is we deliver content, free content like this, right? Some people are impressed with it. They'll probably inbox us and they would want to know more. If we advertise a course, most of those individuals will be able to jump in. Those courses are normally not free. People will be able to pay for them. So for me, creating those courses, thinking about how to structure all the modules, thinking about the value that I'm going to deliver to my customers is a high income generating thing. Now, if I'm tied up picking up calls, doing the day-to-day admin of the business, it will steal all my time away from doing the high income generating thing. You catch my drift, right? So at first, probably I won't have any other choice. I'll be doing all that myself. But I need to document what I'm doing so that when I bring in an individual to come and help me out with all those admin tasks, with all those picking up calls and things like that, you'll just be able to follow that process that I've laid down. And that's how you create systems. So that even when you're away, the output of the work will still be as high quality as you like it. You're building a machine, not a maze. And that's how you earn your freedom, not just by working harder, but also by working smarter. Now, this particular mistake for me is very, very embarrassing because not only do many business owners make it, I made this mistake many times. Look, just because you have a skill does not mean you have a business. Many entrepreneurs will invest and go deep based on just excitement of an idea, not based on market data. Someone will just hear, at Kasumbalesa with pigs, you can never go wrong, and they will jump into pigs, not knowing exactly what's happening at Kasumbalesa. For those of you that don't know, Kasumbalesa is the border, and what happens at that border is that there is high demand. This is the classic example of supply and demand. So what happens at Kasumbalesa is that sometimes things can be in demand, and when they're in demand, the price will soar up. And that only happens for a short space of time. So by the time that you're hearing that pigs are in demand at Kasumbalesa, it means that the market will have already been flooded. You're taking your pigs there and you find that the supply is so high such that now the prices have gone down. You've used up your transport, you've spent on labor, and just the time that it took you to grow all those pigs to get them to that healthy weight. And then you find that the prices on that border are falling. You have no choice but to be able to sell those pigs right there because of all the things that you've spent. The sunk cost fallacy, right? So if you are that individual who then took your pigs because you heard that you can't go wrong with pigs at Kasumbalesa, then you find that the demand is that you didn't understand how the market works at Kasumbalesa, you will fall into a loss. I made the same mistake when I established my business, Fifth Dimension Business Solutions. This was solely because of my web development skills. Now I could make high quality websites. I was good at web development and design. And I thought, since this is the only skill that I have, why can't I just monetize it and sell it to the market? Little did I know that at that time, the market reception to web development wasn't really all that overwhelming. So you'd end up not making sales months and months on end because the Zambian market at that time didn't really value this type of skill. Now, if I was an individual who appreciated data and research, I could have gone in and done a little test just to see how the demand is before actually jumping in, registering a full business and things like that, and end up being stuck with a business that doesn't work. So we just jumped in, not asking, is there even demand for this particular skill? Do they even see value? How big is this particular market? But we didn't do all that. So what were the results? Months and months of struggle, no income, and a lot of wasted efforts because I made a lot of cold calls. So what are we saying? Don't build based on assumptions. Do your market research, ask very, very deep questions, know who you're serving and what they're willing to pay for. Then just build around that. Did you know that the same way we acquire a customer, the same way we have a cost to acquire a customer, we need a cost to acquire talent? Do you know that? If you're at a healthy stage where you're now hiring in your business, you need a talent acquisition strategy. You need a pipeline that is full of highly talented individuals coming into your business. Most businesses only hire when it's urgent. They have no pipeline, no structure, just panic. This comes about when business owners treat hiring as if it's just a mundane activity, as if it's just one of those things that has to be done, as if it's just a simple transaction. There is no strategy behind it. They're not really being intentional about creating an employer brand, and they have no system to be able to attract good people. And even when they hire these people, there is no onboarding strategy. They just bring in a person into the company and that person has got no idea what they're there to do. The results? High turnover, poor output. And you don't want that. You want your employees to be able to increase your output. So how do you avoid this? Start planning for hiring in advance. Define your ideal team members, just the same way you define your ideal customer profile. Build systems to attract and evaluate talent even before you need them. You see, talent is leverage, so use it wisely. Now, thinking small just keeps you broke. When you see yourself like the way I used to as just a designer or just a freelancer, you trap yourself in the grind. This mindset usually comes from survival mode. You're doing everything yourself. You think the more skilled you are, the more you will earn. But skill without skill is slavery. Look at skills in sales, design, operations, web development, you name it. But I was doing it all by myself. I didn't have any leverage. And even the thinking itself was wrong. I was thinking in terms of skills instead of markets. You need to change your thinking from thinking like a slave to be able to think like a master of the whole market. Now when I look at business, I'm not looking at leveling up my skills until someone can be able to pay my worth, right? I'm looking at capturing the whole market, thinking about capturing the whole value chain. Look, if you're a low-level designer, a low-level developer, there is a cap to how much you can be able to earn per year. But if you just change your view and look at the whole market and think like an agency owner, you can be able to make almost 100x more than you can make as a developer or a designer. Because guess what? The agency owner pays all those developers and designers. How? Because they're making more. You don't have to only look at it in that way. Whatever market that you're in, you can always have a bigger, more high-level view of that market. Take this exercise today. Try to think about owning the whole market. How will your business look like if you own the whole market? If you were a master of that market? Listen, to grow, think bigger. Shift from operator to owner, from worker to builder, and from surviving to scaling. There's a type of mindset that I want you to get out of, and that's the profit and loss mindset. Now, the profit and loss mindset is you're just looking at what will bring a profit right there and then. Now, what the profit and loss mindset means is that you're only looking at what will earn a profit right there and then. It stops you from thinking long term about what will bring more leverage in the future if you invest in it now, because you want whatever you invest in now to be able to bring a return maybe in a month or in a week or something like that. That's the only thing that you're looking at. But what about a long-term play, like a 5-year plan? What would be able to bring in 5 years, I can give you an example of, the CEO of Gymshark. So what this guy did when he came into the company is that he flipped the marketing budget. At first, what they were doing is that 70% of the budget was come and buy from us, come and buy from us. Then 30% of the marketing budget was going into sponsoring athletes and things like that, right? But when this guy came in, he switched the whole budget. He put 70% into sponsoring athletes, getting the brand visible and things like that, and 30% into, you can come and buy from us. How long did it take for that play to pay out? That play took almost 18 months for it to pay out. That's almost 1 year, 6 months. But guess what? It brought in almost 10x the ROI as to what they were getting the previous year. Now that's investing in assets. So this guy invested more in brand and positioning. So I want you to shift your mindset from thinking into profit and loss to be able to think in asset. Asset-based thinking is what I'm preaching. I need you to invest in things that are so valuable. For example, like a website. I talked about websites and things like that in this video that I've linked here. How those can play as an asset. You might not be able to see the return today, but in the long term, you'll be able to see the value of all those things. Think of things like an email list. Think of things like content, educational and helpful content, right? Not just memes and things like that. So when you graduate from profit and loss thinking to asset-based thinking, you won't just be hustling. You will keep creating things that bring value. So if you want to be able to grow further faster, avoid all these mistakes that I've stated here. Which of these mistakes do you relate to most? Leave your thoughts in the comment box below. Like it or not, business is not for the weak. So I congratulate you for sticking around. But you and I know the toughest part about growing your business is managing people. Now, if you've ever felt stuck leading people and you've been wondering how to structure and lead a growing company, then watch this video.